A couple of years ago, I was skiing on Whistler Mountain with my family. I'm a fast skier, so I usually zip down the mountain and wait for my dad to catch up with my phone in hand, in case he needs to reach me. One run, I stopped about halfway down the mountain to wait for him to catch up, and received a phone call from my dad. When I picked up, he didn't answer. Instead, I heard what sounded like radio chatter. I couldn't make out what was being said except for one thing. "We lost him. Wait, he stopped by the tree." Then the line went dead, and my dad came skiing down. Not only was he not on his phone, but his phone was dead. I told my family about this, and even had the phone call record in my recent phone calls as evidence that I had at least received a call when I claimed I did. What was especially strange is that my younger brother had a memory of the event as well. He said I had skied to the bottom of the mountain where he was eating lunch, and I had received a phone call in front of him. He also told me the next morning that he had a nightmare that men in suits were standing around his bed, telling him to forget what he had seen, and that I could never know the truth. He could have easily been messing with me, but he seemed shaken up at the time and is still fascinated with the events when I bring it up today. When this happened, it completely shattered my worldview on reality. I still find myself questioning what is real. It was a very strange event I feel like I was never supposed to experience. It eerily reminds me of the scene in the Truman Show where his car radio is playing security radio chatter of them following him. Here's a weird one for you. When I was 25, a friend and I were out hiking in the woods on a mountain near where we live. It was a beautiful summer day, and we went to a stream out there we knew of to cool our feet for a while. While there, a few people passed us. We said hi and made a little small talk as they went along, but one girl came by, and when we said hi, she didn't respond. She didn't even seem to notice us. She was really cute though, and both my friend and I noticed that she wasn't exactly dressed for hiking. Her hair was up and not in a messy bun or ponytail, but done real nice. She had on a t-shirt, but like a nice one with a floral design. She had slacks on, and her shoes weren't hiking boots or even running shoes. They were those slip-on ones people wear for semi-formal get-togethers. I looked at my friend to say something, but then looked back to see which direction she was going. I was kinda hoping to maybe bump into her again further down the trail and try to strike up a conversation. But when I looked back, she was gone. My buddy hadn't seen where she went either, which was kinda weird since we were in an open field and you could see down the trail for a good while in either direction. Well, you can't win them all, so my friend and I spent the rest of the day hiking and then headed back. A week later, and I went to a dinner party at another friend's house, but the friend I had gone hiking with was also there that night. The guy's house I went to had a fiancée who loved to cook, so she would put these dinners together every month or so, just a close group of friends coming together to break bread kind of thing. Everyone brought a dish, and she would make a main course. I could tell why he was marrying her. Her food was phenomenal. We were there talking, there with other guests as well, probably 15 people total, and my friend's fiancée introduced her new co-worker that had recently moved here from out of town. She was wearing the exact same shirt, pants, and shoes. She had the same hairstyle and everything. The friend I had gone hiking with and I stared at each other. We couldn't believe it. Her name was Cindy, and we hit it off right away. It was great. We started dating pretty quickly, and after 3 months of being together, I told her I wanted to take her to the place I first saw her. She was kinda confused because she thought I was taking her to the friend's house we had dinner at. I took her out to the trail I'd been hiking the day I saw her, and she swore she had never been there before. I then told her about how I had seen her there one day with my other friend. She didn't believe me. A few days later, we were at the bar with my hiking friend, and he told her everything and confirmed my story. I don't think she ever really believed us though. Sadly, I won't know for sure if she did or not. A year after we had started dating, her childhood non-Hodgkin's lymphoma returned. and despite treatment for it, she passed away. That time with her was so far the best time of my life. I'm 38 now and still have not found anyone that makes me feel like Cindy had. I'm just glad I got to spend what time she had left with her. I don't know. Seeing her before I even met her made it feel more like it was meant to be, and made it even more special. Once a week for the past 2 years, I've walked to and from a supermarket. On the way, I walk down a long road which has houses on one side and a whole lot of nothing on the other, except for the remains of a little store that sold newspapers and daily essentials. For the past 2 years, I've passed these remains and recalled the time, around 6 years ago, my friend and I were passing the store, but had to take shelter there when the heavens suddenly opened up and a heavy rainstorm started. It made me feel a little melancholic to look at the remains, thinking of happier times and so on. What used to be a store that happily served its local community was now barely 3 partially knocked down walls and a pile of rubble. Last week, it was the 3 walls and a pile of rubble. Today, to my utter astonishment, it's the same store as 6 years ago. I couldn't really say what it looked like in between then and the past 2 years, as I only moved back to the area 2 years ago. Kind of run down and old looking, but certainly not a pile of rubble. I can't be sure, but I believe it's the same 2 old men running it who called my friend and I a cab that day we were caught in the storm. This is my first experience since childhood that I'd describe as supernatural. This happened when I was 16. My mother used to take my phone at night and then give it back to me when she woke me up for school the following morning. Every morning started the same. She would wake me up. I would go to the bathroom to take a shower and get ready. I'd come out and put on my uniform. She'd give me breakfast, and then I'd run out of the house to catch the public bus. This is the important part. I would always take my phone in the bathroom with me. I'm the type of person who plans my day by the minutes. I knew I had to take my shower for X amount of minutes, get out of the shower by X time, leave the house at X time to catch the bus. So, same routine. I was in the bathroom, and I remember it so clearly. My shower took way longer than usual, and instead of it being 7:15, the phone said 7:23. I remember rushing out of the bathroom as I was supposed to leave the house by 7:25 most days. I rushed and put on my uniform, and my mom followed me half out of the house with my breakfast. I distinctly remember checking the clock before I left too, trying to figure out if I had time to catch the bus, or if I had to take a car to school. The clock was at 7:28. I had time to catch the bus. It was a snowy day in January. I also remember that vividly. The sky was gray and dark, but that's how it was every day. The streets were eerily empty. I stood at my bus stop, which was on the side of a pretty busy street. Not today. No one was on the street. Maybe a car passed by once every few minutes. I started getting worried that I'd be late for school. That's when I looked down at my phone to call my dad to drop me off at school. It was 4:03 a.m. I was shocked. It couldn't be. I walked back home and my mom was still up getting my other sister ready for school. She was surprised to see me. I told her to check the time, and to her surprise, it was 4 a.m. She started saying how she swore her alarm woke her up at 7, like it does every single morning, and we both looked at each other and swore we saw the same time. A 4 a.m. snowy day and a 7 a.m. snowy day looked the same outside, but I knew I'd checked the clock enough times to confirm it was 7 a.m. Regardless, we all went back to sleep, and I again woke up at 7. This time I made my dad take me to school, and the whole day I had my eyes on the clock. This incident never happened to me again, but I still have no explanation for it. This happened when I was a teen back in the early 2000s. I lived out in a small community outside of a larger town. I had lived there since I was little, and it's a small place, so it's hard to get lost. It was a Friday night and I had a friend sleeping over. We went for a walk around 9 at night, just to get out of the house and be stupid teens. There's seriously only so many streets to walk in that town. One side to the other is about a 30-minute walk. We were on our way back to my house, and there was a turn we were supposed to take, but when we got to the turn, it wasn't there. You can't miss these turns. There are so few roads to take around there, and if you know the place, you know where they are. I can't stress that enough. I could walk that place blindfolded. I had been around it so many times. We looked at each other, confused as hell, because where the street should have been, there was a fence in the way. It was like the houses on each side of the street had their yards enlarged by 20 feet each. We didn't know what to do and thought that by some weird off chance we had remembered wrong or had missed the street, so we turned around to see if it was behind us. We went all the way to the end of the road where it splits, with one road going left and one right. Obviously, our turn wasn't there, so we went back. This time, when we got to where the road we had to take to get home was, it was there again. I know we didn't just miss it the first time, because the house on the right corner of where we turn has a bunch of wind chimes and lawn decorations in it, and that was the same house we saw the first time we were there. To this day, I still don't know what happened that night. We weren't high or anything like that. The road simply disappeared for a brief time that night, and then reappeared later on. This happened yesterday, and I still can't stop thinking about it. My boyfriend wasn't home, and I'd put my phone on charge behind the couch, then sat down and started reading. About 10 minutes later, I heard my boyfriend shout, "Baby," and sat up startled. He sometimes does this when he comes home to make me aware of his presence before he comes into the room, because I always jump if I don't hear him come in. I sat for a second because I couldn't hear any movement, then turned around to get off the couch and go see him and see what he was doing. As I got up, my phone lit up, and it was a text message from him, literally a few seconds after I'd just heard him call me. I thought nothing of it until I opened the living room door, and he wasn't stood in the hallway. I checked my phone, and he'd actually texted me something pretty urgent, and it made me even more freaked out. I'd heard him shout me so clearly. It felt like, in some weird way, it was to get my attention from the book, turn around, and get my phone. Anyone have thoughts on this? This summer, I started to work out frequently to shed those quarantine pounds I had put on during lockdown. I was doing a lot of running, usually at night because I'm not one to wake up early, and work kept me busy during the day. One night, I went out for my usual route. Halfway through and everything was feeling fine. I felt pretty good. Came up to a corner and I saw a car about to turn my way. I looked down, expecting the usual headlights to shine right in my eyes and blind me. A few seconds pass, no car. I kept running, thinking it was just taking longer than I thought it would. Then I heard the car pass. The sound of the engine, the crunch of the blacktop under its tires, and even felt the gust of air as it went by, but no lights. I looked up and there was no car, not one in front of me, nor one behind me. In fact, there were no cars on the street at all. All the streetlights were off as well, and all the lights in the houses were off too. The only lights I saw were the stars in the sky and the moon. The houses were there, and I could still see the color of them from the moonlight. It felt like I was the only person left in the world. That's the best way I can describe it. I pinched myself to see if I was dreaming or something like that, and I could feel it. I looked back up at the sky because I was so confused I didn't know what else to do, and looking at the empty street was freaking me out. And then I got hit with the flash of headlights from a car passing by, and everything returned to normal. I'm 28 and in good health. No history of mental health issues in me or any of my immediate family. I don't do drugs and only drink occasionally. I don't know what happened. Been thinking about seeing a doctor, but I'm afraid I'd sound crazy. If it happens again, I will go see my doc. Until then, I guess it was just a glitch in the matrix. I'm 48 years old, of sound mind and body. Never had anything paranormal or even unexplainable happen to me in my life before. Despite that, I've always had an interest in the unexplained and the mysteries this world holds. I don't hold to the theory that life is a computer simulation or anything like that, but do think that maybe somewhere out there a higher force is at work. Regardless of my past and lack of experience, I have had something happen in the last few days that, while I think there is some kind of explanation for it, I can't for the life of me fathom what it is. 2 days ago while at work, I work as a human resource manager in a firm I won't name. I had an employee come in with a complaint that was as unique as it was serious. I guess I'm trying to say that it wouldn't be easily confused with anything else I had dealt with that day, or that I can even remember. The meeting went on for a good 40-45 minutes before they left. I remember what the person looked like, their name, and even what they wore. I was filling out the paperwork when there was another knock on my door. I looked up and it was the same person asking if they could come in for the scheduled meeting. I was absolutely confused. I thought at first it was some kind of prank or trick, or that maybe the person had some kind of mental disorder or memory lapse. I insisted they had already been by to see me, and they swore they hadn't. I then repeated what they had told me previously, and they were shocked that I already knew, but still insisted they hadn't been by earlier. After a bit, I decided I didn't want the employee to feel like they hadn't been heard, so I told them to tell me again what happened. They came in and started off by saying that, while it sounded like I had already heard what had happened, they wanted me to hear their side of the story. I sat through another 45 minutes of what I had been told previously, almost word for word. When they were done, I thought it was the oddest thing that they wouldn't have remembered seeing me earlier. So I looked through my schedule and realized I hadn't had a meeting set for the first time they came in, and the second time they were in was when the meeting was set for. This got me thinking on why they would have showed up earlier and then came back for their scheduled meeting to only tell me what they had already told me. I checked the paperwork I'd been filling out before they came in, and it was all blank. I write my notes in a notebook before I put them in the computer, and none of my notes were there from the first meeting either. I would think I had lost my mind if it weren't for the second meeting, where I repeated what they had told me the first time, and they agreed that it was right. Just so you know, I wrote down the notes after the second meeting, once I realized the ones from the first meeting weren't there. It's almost like I went to the future and talked to them, then came back to the present and talked to them again. Not sure what to make of this, and I can't even begin to understand it. If anyone has any plausible explanation, I would very much like to hear it.